following points will be covered during this video: how to prepare, read, and adjust the torsion balance, materials needed to weigh a representative pharmaceutical powder. In order to accurately weigh components on the torsion balance, appropriate techniques in leveling the balance and weighing materials should be practiced. In this weighing exercise, Christine will be weighing powder as I go through the procedure. First, make sure the balance is arrested. The knob should be turned all the way to the left. Lift the balance and place it in a more convenient location to use, where the countertop is level with no vibrations and minimal air currents. Notice Christine is lifting the balance rather than dragging it to avoid damaging the surface of the lab bench. Remember that the dash pot has silicone fluid, and care should be taken not to tilt the balance as you move it to avoid spilling the fluid. Christine is now going to use white lactose to demonstrate proper weighing technique that one should get into the habit of practicing in order to minimize error. To avoid mix-ups, always place stock containers of substances yet to be weighed to the left of the balance, only moving them to the right side after they have been weighed. Gather all materials you will need to weigh the substance, including weighing paper, a spatula, and a set of weights. For the purpose of this video, we will be using metric weights. Before weighing, make sure the balance is clean from its previous use. It looks clean. Next, place weighing paper onto each pan in order to protect the pans and weights from any potential corrosive material. Two common types of weighing paper used include bond paper, which is white, thick and stiff, and glassine paper, which is off-white, grainish, thin, and flimsy. The bond paper is easier to work with because of its stiffness, and this will become evident as you will soon learn in lab. However, powders, aqueous, and oleaginous substances adhere more to bond paper than to glassine paper. Therefore, glassine paper is preferred over bond paper in weighing liquids, semi-solids, or small amounts of powder. The weighing paper used should be the right size, small enough so the lid can be closed when we check the final weight, but large and strong enough to hold the amount of powder to be weighed so that the paper does not collapse at the edges of the pan. Bond paper is less prone to collapsing in comparison to glassine paper. In order to better contain powder on the weighing paper, make diagonal creases to create pockets to hold the powder. One may also fold the edges of the weighing paper up to allow for the closure of the lid and for better containment of large volumes of powder. This is how your weighing paper should look. Before weighing, check to make sure the balance has been arrested. If the knob is unarrested and the pans are released, then addition of the substance when the pans are freely swinging can jam the torsion mechanism or damage it. The only situation in which the pans may be unarrested when adding substance is if you are close to the final weight. I will come back to address this further later on in this video. The weighing paper placed on both pans should be of the same size and type to bring the pans to equilibrium more easily. Equilibrium is achieved when the pointer rests on the central point of the index. Christine's pans are not yet in equilibrium and will need to be brought into equilibrium. Before doing this, I want to point out that when the lid is closed, the rest point can be observed through the glass either from the sides or the top. One's preference may vary with their height. Standing too far to the left or too far to the right may make the pointer falsely appear displaced from the central point on the index plate. Therefore, in order to level the balance appropriately, it is crucial to follow proper technique. One should be standing at a comfortable distance directly in front of the balance, keeping the midline of your nose lined up with the central point on the index plate. If you get into the habit of doing this, you will experience no difficulty in achieving consistency and accuracy in determining whether the pointer is truly resting at the central point. Christine is now ready to level the balance. If drafts affect reliable performance of the balance, close the lid and make sure the weighing paper isn't touching it to stabilize the pans. Next, turn the dial counterclockwise to read 0 if it isn't already. Every time a different weighing paper is used, equilibrium must be established again since they will have different weights. To establish equilibrium, adjust the leveling screws located on the bottom front corners of the balance. Adjust the leveling screws so that the pointer is on the 0 mark. Here, Christine's pointer is off to the left. Therefore, she will need to adjust the leveling screws to bring the pointer back to 0 or equilibrium. It is now at equilibrium. Front to back tilts are caused by only adjusting one screw and not the other. If a front to back tilt is observed, make sure the pans are arrested and turn both the screws in the same direction until the tilt is removed. Once the pans are leveled and the pointer is in equilibrium, you are ready to weigh the powder. The weights always go on the right pan. Never handle the weights with bare hands. Instead, use forceps so that no chemicals are contaminating the weights. Unclean weights that contain body oils or debris can result in inaccurate weighing or cause the weights to corrode. Small weights can be used, but they are easy to lose and can produce inaccurate results if handled extensively. Instead, the dollar can be used for milligram quantities. The dial contains scales in the metric system indicated as grams, and in the apothecary system indicated as grains. The metric scale has major divisions in tenths of a gram. For example, 0.1 gram, 0.2 gram, 0.3 grams, and so forth, up to 1 gram, while the minor scale has divisions in the hundredths of a gram. For example, 0.05 gram, 0.06 grams, 0.07 grams, and so forth. However, the dial cannot be set to accurately weigh single milligram quantities. For example, 0.454 grams cannot be weighed accurately. You can only accurately weigh up to 2 decimal points such as 0.45 grams. For the apothecary scale, the major divisions in the dial are in whole grains up to 15. For example, 9 grains, 10 grains, and so forth, while the minor divisions are in fractions of grains. For example, 1/8 of a grain, 1/4 of a grain, and half of a grain. Furthermore, the dial cannot be used to weigh decimal quantities of grains. For example, 2.1 or 2.2 grains. Instead, you can accurately weigh 2 1/8 grains, 2 1/4 grains, and 2 1/2 grains. Once you are ready to weigh, arrest the pans. Then add the appropriate weights to the right pan and use a spatula to add the substances from their stock containers to the left pan. Christine is going to demonstrate how to properly weigh out 0.6 grams or 600 milligrams of lactose powder. Here, Christine will use the dial to measure this quantity. However, small weights can also be used. When adding substances to the left pan, always keep the pans arrested. Also, always read the label of the stock container. Never dump material from the stock containers directly onto the pans as it may cause damage to the balance mechanism and can be wasteful. Instead, use a spatula. As you add material to the pans, occasionally release the pans to see how close you are to the desired quantity. Only once you are close to the desired amount, you can release the balance and gradually add small quantities until the pointer reaches the 0 mark. If you go beyond the 0 mark, arrest the balance and remove small quantities of the substance from the left pan until the 0 mark is reached. Any excess substances should be placed on a separate weighing paper to be discarded and should not be placed back into its stock container. Try not to have too much excess substance as this can be expensive to replace. The powder must be labeled to prevent any mix-ups and can be placed next to its respective stock containers to the right of the balance. In order to weigh the next substance, make sure the balance is arrested. Remove the weights on the right pan and dial it back to 0 and follow the same aforementioned procedure. Let's review. Glassine and bond paper are the two most common types of weighing paper. Weighing paper can be folded diagonally or with all sides folded up. It's important to arrest the balance before moving it to a more convenient location and also before adding or removing weight from the left or right pans. Stand at a comfortable distance directly in front of the balance, keeping the midline of your nose lined up with the central point on the index plate. If draft affects reliable performance of the balance, close the lid and make sure the weighing paper isn't touching it to stabilize the pans. Establish equilibrium with weighing paper on the pans by adjusting leveling screws located at the bottom front corners so that the pointer is centered at the 0 mark. Avoid a front to back tilt by adjusting both leveling screws. If a front to back tilt is observed, turn both leveling screws in the same direction until the tilt is removed. Weights should always be placed on the right pan using forceps. Substances to be weighed should always be placed on the left pan using a spatula. The dialer has both metric and apothecary scales. Always use a spatula to transfer substances from their stock containers. Never dump excess material back into the stock container. Instead, place it on a separate weighing paper. Always label all substances. Arrest and properly store the torsion balance. Clean your lab area before leaving.